Hello, everybody, and welcome to the AP Lit session today. We are excited that you're joining in with us for another week of learning. I'm Susan Barber. I'm from Grady High School, and here's my co-teacher, Bear Barber, once again joining in with us. So like I said, we're excited to be here for another week of learning. I hope that all of you have had just a good weekend, some time for some self-care, to step away from school for a few minutes and not think about that. And now we're going to jump back into learning. So with me is Mr. Escobar.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm glad you guys are tuning in. We had a great week last week, I thought, and we dedicated the first 3 days to Unit 8, which happened to deal with poetry. And like we mentioned, I believe last Friday, that started a bunch of rumors that this year's exam was going to focus on poetry. So Ms. Barber and I are prepared for the new set of rumors, since now we're dealing with Unit 9, and that's going to have us talking about the open-ended question, basically, longer fiction and drama. Now, this presents an interesting challenge to some extent, because we all haven't read the same book and we all haven't studied the same book. But I guarantee you that, because we're going to be talking about skills, we're going to be talking about skills actually that you can apply to even your study of poetry or your study of short fiction or the prose question. I guarantee you that these next few days will be chock full of information that you can apply to all aspects of this exam and of this course.
And we're also going to let you practice each night on a novel that you've read, either independently or as a class. So you will have the opportunity to personalize this for you.
Absolutely. And as usual, we're going to begin with our warm-up, which is based on the homework that we gave last time, which was based on Ted Hughes's To Paint a Water Lily. And if we recall, the last time we met, we were talking about the significance of words and phrases, and what this minute reading, this very careful, close inspection of the text reveals once you identify these significant words and phrases. And here we highlighted a few, and by all means, this is not the answer to our homework assignment. You could have highlighted anything. I mean, the prehistoric dragon times, like Crawl the Darkness with Latin names, is absolutely significant. But we figured that you all highlighted that, so we chose not to. But here we have a set of interesting pairings. And we could focus maybe on the green first. The level of lily leaves, the flies, furious arena. And then we're going to introduce bullets by later on, because each of these three things have something in common, which is the use of alliteration. But of course, they're not alliterating, if you will, with one another, right? But these are three different sets of alliteration. But because this is being employed within the first three stanzas, then a careful reader would highlight this and say, why would Ted Hughes be turning to this literary device? He clearly wants me to focus on these lines. He clearly wants me to see how these ideas or these words are being brought together. And this is when we're going to start making the connection to the central idea. We also have the phrases, the two minds of this lady and deep in both worlds. Those are interesting pairings, because what you have is something that takes place very early on in the poem, right? We have line 4 of the poem, and then something that appears in the penultimate stanza of the poem. But they're both turning our attention to this duality. This is, as you may have discovered last time or last night or whenever you worked through this poem, this is not the easiest of poems. I mean, it's the kind of poem where you might come in and out of meaning, but turning to these two phrases will give you an idea that something is being divided. So if you could find, again, if we go back to video 1, which was about structure, if you go back and you find where the structural shift takes place, you might be able to see exactly what is going on here. And then we have a series of hyphenated words that are linked together. We have battle shouts and death cries, which are very violent and, if you will, negative images. But then later on, we also have hyphenated words, and this time we have long-necked lily flower. The imagery here is different, isn't it? It's gentler, it's peaceful, and perhaps this is again turning our attention to the duality that exists in the poem. So if these are the words and phrases that we have decided to look at, our next challenge is to develop claims. And here we haven't fully developed the claims. We don't want to give you all the answers. And this is what we told you guys last time. We're going to provide you with the scaffold. We're going to provide you with the step, but then you have to ultimately take that final leap. So for those of you who had some trouble with the poem or had some trouble finding what were the most important words and phrases, we're going to take the ones we identified. I'm going to give you an observation regarding those. And then perhaps if you want to extend your learning based on last night's homework, make sure you finish off the claim by connecting it to a central idea. So the first, the green, deals with the alliteration. And here we wrote, the use of alliteration in the first three couplets focuses the reader's attention to a natural setting, the level of lily leaves, followed by an introduction to the fly's furious arena. It, the alliteration, then introduces a militaristic idea by describing the dragonfly's movement with the expression bullets by. So these are the observations, right? We say, I've read this poem, I've identified alliteration, and I've written a sentence that tells me how the alliteration is functioning, but what's missing now is the connection, like I said, to the central idea. We did the same thing then with the mention of the two minds of the lady and the expression both worlds, but we're not giving you anything for the use of the hyphenated pairs of words here. So again, if you're going to extend the learning, you know, what Ms. Barber and I have been communicating with a lot of the educators and students who watch these videos, and what they tell us is that you guys are actually having meetings before our lesson or after a lesson where you go over the homework. Well, this is one where the homework is going to come back to haunt you because I'm giving you more homework on the homework. And here, I want you to think about those hyphenated words and answer the final question here. What claims can you make about the presence of hyphenated words in the poem? Again, we're going to have an observation that we're going to tie to a central idea, and that is the gist of last night's homework. Moving on to today, and here's where we're transitioning again from Unit 8 to Unit 9. So we're transitioning from poetry to the study of longer works of fiction. Remember that Ms. Barbara, perhaps you want to mention the calendar at this stage?
So later this week, I'm not exactly sure what day, but later this week, we will be releasing a calendar that takes us from now until May 1st, and it will have every day's lesson on it. So right now we are finishing covering Unit 9, just so we have worked through the entire course, and college professors can be assured that students have worked through all of the course material. But starting next week, we will be going back and reviewing specifically to get ready for the exam. And again, not just to get ready for the exam, even though we do want to prepare you for the exam, because we haven't done our job if we haven't prepared you for the exam. But more importantly, we just want to help you be better readers, better thinkers, better writers. So all of these lessons will have targeted exam instruction, but they will also just help you as a critical thinker in today's world. So that calendar will be coming out later this week.
Perfect, thank you. And today, the lesson will center on characterization, specifically characterization that you would look at towards the end of the course. So earlier in the course, you may look at things like how can we describe the character? Who is this character? Maybe what is that the relationship between characters? Whereas at the end of the course, we're going to be looking at greater complexities. We're going to be looking at how the choices, actions, and the speech of the character himself or herself conveys nuances that require our careful attention. The reason we do this is because we have to look at who this character is to see how the character will react to the resolution, the conclusion, if you will, although stories don't always conclude, right? Sometimes they just finish and you're left wondering what's going to happen next. But we got to see, how does this character react to or contribute to the resolution of the work, and how does that reaction on the character's part reveal their value system. And we're also going to look at inconsistencies and unexpected developments in a character, because sometimes these unexpected turns will really get to the ambiguity in the text. And whenever we're talking about ambiguity or we're talking about nuance, we're talking about really deep levels of analysis, and that's where you want to live in. You don't want to live at the surface. We don't want to live at the summary or regurgitation stage. We want to look at what you discover when you delve into the richness in the text.
So let's go ahead and jump on in to today's lesson. As Mr. Escobar was talking about, we want to look below the surface level in a character, in a text. And this next slide is going to give you an example of what that looks like with the character. So you can see here this iceberg. And as you know, we see the very tip of an iceberg when we're looking at it in nature. And if we compare this to a character, this would be like the character's actions, the character's speech, maybe even the author is telling us the character's thoughts. We have access to their thoughts. But what we don't see, and what we want to ask questions about, and what we want to consider when we are looking at these outward things that we see, are all of the things that are beneath the surface level. So all of the things that create characters will help influence their actions, their speech, and some thoughts. And here are some examples. We have to think about like motivation, and I put this very close to the surface level, because characters' motivation, it really influences what they're doing and what they're saying. And as astute readers, it's good for us to always be thinking, what motivates this character to do this? Maybe the character has secrets, desires. What are the character's hopes? What is their background? How does that influence what they're doing now? Maybe they have passions that are driving them, or social issues, relationships. All of these things can work together to influence what we see in the character. So we want to train our mind to not only see what is apparent, but to think below the surface level. So I have this, this picture is attached in the description if you want to use that later to help refresh your memory of what to think about when we're thinking about character complexity. So today we are going to be talking about Frankenstein specifically. As you can see, Bear likes Frankenstein. Frankenstein is a novel that we at Grady look at every year. My students look at this every year. I think it is a very widely taught work in the AP community, but I know not everyone has read it, and it's okay if you haven't. I think you'll still be able to follow the progression and the practice at the end. You're going to be able to choose a novel that you want to think about closely, so you'll still be able to individualize this. But let's just quickly frame Frankenstein. That's kind of interesting, frame, because it's a frame narrative. I'm just making literature jokes that probably no one thinks is funny. So Frankenstein is this story of Dr. Frankenstein. One of the misnomers is, you know, Frankenstein is this creature, but really Frankenstein, he is the doctor, he is the creator, he is the scientist here. And he makes this creature from dead body parts, brings it to life and abandons it, and thus begins this creature's plight of figuring out who he is, what his relationship is to the creator, and just how he fits into society. So that's the basic premise of it. We are going to be looking at actually the creatures development. And so one thing that we want to do, we're going to look at several excerpts. I've pulled several excerpts, but when we're approaching a text, and this is specifically for a question 3. So if we are thinking about a text as a whole and not just one specific passage from it, what we want to do is we want to like zoom in, zoom out. We want to be looking at the small details, the small passages, but then we want to be taking those small passages and thinking about how it fits in this bigger, broader context. So we're always going in and looking at specific words, specific phrases, specific scenes, and then we're always expanding those to broader context, looking small, looking big. We're going to be just shifting our focus throughout this whole lesson, looking small, making broader context. And that's what you should do as a reader in general. You should be thinking about, what does this sentence specifically mean? What do these words mean? What does this chapter mean? Now, how does this fit within a broader context? So our first passage, when we think about the creature that we're going to look at, is in chapter 11. And this is it's just a sad part of the novel, because the creature has been abandoned by Frankenstein, and he is out on his own. He comes to this village and the people attack him. And you can see we have some of that highlighted. They attack him. He is bruised by stones and other missile type of weapons. And then at the end of this passage, he talks about he's finding a place that he can take refuge from them. And he has found this place, and it is dry, but we still have the wind is entering it. It has an earth floor, so it's a very primitive type of shelter that he's in. And one of the things that stands out to me in this passage is after he is attacked, after he is just really physically hurt, and I would say not only even physically hurt, but emotionally hurt by the town people, he is just looking for a place of refuge. And it's so interesting to me that he is only talking about his physical shelter here, and he doesn't discuss any emotional type of hurt. So that to me makes me say, this is important. I wonder what that means. Let me go below the surface level and think about that. Why doesn't he think about his emotions here? So I created this system of thinking, or a chart, to help me think through passages like this so I can look at his development. So first of all, we're going to identify a scene. We're thinking about the creature. What are some significant scenes that cause me to question? So I would put in the first scene is where he's attacked and he finds shelter. his motivation here at the end, he is just trying to have his primary needs met. Then we'll look at his actions. He shelters himself. And we're eventually tying this back to Victor, because so much of the creature's existence and his search is tied to Victor. And it's interesting right now, he really has no thoughts of Victor. Like I said, he's almost separated himself emotionally. So that's just a scene that I'm like, I'm going to bookmark that. I think that's interesting that he doesn't bring his emotion at all in. And now I'm going to look at another scene from the creature. So the next one we'll look at is from chapter 15. And this is where the creature has started to read. He's read Paradise Lost. And all of a sudden, his emotions awake in him. And I think this is so interesting because now he says, I was sickened as I read. And he is cursing his creator. He's in agony. Why? Now he has all of these questions after reading. And then at the end, he realizes that he is abhorred. He is alone. And we have gone from this no emotion, really, just taking care of physical needs, to now heavy, heavy emotion. And I think this is such a contrast in him. And it's so interesting as well, because a lot of times we think about people when they gain knowledge, and the more that they learn, this helps them grow as people. And it has enlightened the creature, but it has really brought about this despair in him. So now I go back through the questioning process that I did before. So this is another scene that I think is important in this character's development. He's reading Paradise Lost. Now his motivation, he's wanting to gain knowledge about himself and the world that he's in, where he fits here. And his actions, the creature is lashing out in despair and agony. And now we see his reactions toward Victor. He starts to blame him for his reality. So let's go on to another scene. And you'll see these scenes, if you were thinking about the character's development, you would choose probably different scenes, or you might choose to do this with another character, but the process is going to be the same. You're thinking about what are some specific scenes? How do these scenes start to fit together? How can I look at inconsistencies? How can I start tracing a progression? And then how does this reflect, how does this tie back to a central meaning in the work? So we're going from small to big, small to big. So here's some more. And this chapter, especially because it's the very end of the novel, and I think beginnings are so important and endings are so important. So when we are thinking about characters specifically, we want to think about where did they begin, and especially where are they ending? Because when we're thinking about them at the end of a novel, then that's when they have done most of their growth as a character. So that's important for us to see where they end. So this is the creature at the end, and he has now gone from just thinking about his physical needs to having all of these emotions awakened within. And now he's very reflective at the end, looking back over his life, very reflective. Once, I was soothed of these happy dreams, dreams of enjoyment, fame. Once, I really wanted to be with people who loved me. And I thought about just things that were honorable. So we see him starting to reflect, and then we can go on and look at another passage from this same part of chapter 24. But now you know, now he's like, the crimes that I have committed, they've degraded me to the meanest animal. And here he compares himself with an animal. Nothing he's done, nothing anyone has done can be as bad as what he has done. And he can't even believe how he can't even believe his own progression from innocence to, as he says, the meanest animal that he has become. And then finally, this excerpt from chapter 24, he says, but it's so. And now he goes back making this connection to Paradise Lost. The fallen angel becomes a devil, and I am alone. And this truly connects us back to one of the central meanings in the passage, his loneliness and isolation, and where does he fit. So it's so interesting how he has made this journey and now looks back over his life. So again, we can fill this in, go through these same set of questions. So the scene, it's his final scene, and he's recapping to Walton what he's thinking. And his motivation, he is just looking back over his life and trying to find this internal peace that he needs. He's telling his story, and he looks back to, thinks back on Victor. He has a lot of grief, sorrow. He's mourning, you know, the relationship that he never had with his creator. And all of these things point us to bigger, broader ideas. So we've looked at specific scenes, specific words and phrases from scenes, and now we're able to think about not only how did they stand alone, but how did these work together in the creature's development? And then how do they connect to a broader understanding of the text? So we'll go back to Mr. Escobar's graphic organizer that he made the other day, which was great. It's a great way for us to just think about, there's not one meaning of the text, but there are multiple central ideas in a text. So if we put the creature in the center here, because he's the one that we have been focusing on and looking at today, and now we can start to see how these scenes, these specific scenes and specific things about the creature support, they go to bigger, broader ideas. So one of the first ones is the relationship between the creator and his creation. What is this relationship? What are the responsibilities of the two? And we can go back to specific scenes and see, and especially if you even take it bigger and consider some of Dr. Frankenstein's his scenes, we can start piecing these together and using these to help us take steps to the broader meaning. Also, the pursuit of knowledge. We see this creature, the more he pursues knowledge and the more he learns, the more he is aware, and not necessarily, I mean, he's aware of his own grief, of his own just torment within himself. And this is also foiled, you know, we also see this in Victor. There are other themes such as isolation. You can fill in different themes. These are not the only two, but we want to take these specific scenes that we've looked at in books and now think about how do they fit in the broader context of a work. So this is a way to do that. And again, you'll develop your own set of questioning and your own questions to help you do that. But thinking about a character and a character's development, that's a way in to the text and to these broader ideas. So that's probably, for those of you who have not read Frankenstein, that's way more than you've ever wanted to know about Frankenstein. Hopefully, though, you can see the progression with that.
And as we normally do, we want to go back to what our focus was for today. and then figure out, next time I read, next time I approach text, what are the questions that I should be asking myself? So again, we were looking at a character, the choices that this character is making, the actions, the speech, the dialogue, the internal dialogue perhaps of the character, and what do these elements suggest about not just the character, but the work as a whole, right? So the questions that are being suggested here for this skill are the following. Which of a character's choices, actions, and or speech seem contradictory or inconsistent? This is like Ms. Barber was saying, this has nothing to do with Frankenstein. This has to do with literature in general. So we saw the example that she gave us through the character, right, the creature in Frankenstein, but you could put any character, whether you read Hamlet or Lear or Othello or Heathcliff or Mr. Darcy, you could put any character there and see what their actions, choices, and words reveal about them, particularly any inconsistency or ambiguity surrounding that character. How do a character's contradictory or inconsistent traits contribute to a reader's understanding of the character's complexity? I always tell students, it's not about pinning down a character. I always think of, like in a biology class, you pin down that specimen with the little pins. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a hologram. We're trying to take this character who lives within the confines of this book, within these pages, and open it up and let that character pop up, right? Like when we were little and we read those pop-up books, we want that character to stand up and walk away and run away and fly away, because now we have a 360-degree view, a 360-degree understanding of that character. And once you understand a character in that way, and like we said in the previous video, sometimes it's not about having an answer, but about asking the right questions about that character. That's when you're going to get to the complexity inherently built within the character, and thereby the complexity inherently built within the text in which that character lives. And the final question is, how do a character's contradictory or inconsistent traits contribute to meaning in the text? Again, this can take us back to anything. And I'll go to Hamlet for a second, because it seems to be a popular one among the AP Lit community, right? We see contradictory or inconsistent traits in Hamlet all the time, right? I'm going to act, maybe not. I'm upset at Ophelia, but maybe I love her. I want to kill Claudius, but maybe I won't at this moment. I hate all my friends. Maybe I'm all alone in the world. Yet Horatio is definitely the one that he's going to be permanently attached to. So these questions are ways of getting into the heart of a character and determining how they function, how these characters function within the work as a whole. We're going to practice these skills, and we're going to practice with the 2016 prompt. So let me read the prompt to you first. The prompt read, many works of literature contain a character who intentionally deceives others. The character's dishonesty may be intended either to help or to hurt. Such a character, for example, may choose to mislead others for personal safety, to spare someone's feelings, or to carry out a crime. Choose a novel or play in which a character deceives others. Then, in a well-written essay, analyze the motives for that character's deception and discuss how the deception contributes to the meaning of the work as a whole. I want to draw your attention to a few things here. First of all, we're not writing the essay yet. Ms. Barber and I, at the end of this week, as a matter of fact, we're going to start talking about the different parts of an essay. We're going to talk about a thesis statement, and we're going to talk about how we develop commentary and how we expand on that commentary through the use of textual support. So for now, we're not going to write the essay. We're going to have you choose the character, and we're going to have you write 2 or 3 claims on that character and that character's motives. But we do want you to connect those claims to the central idea in the text. And this is where a little dissection maybe of the prompt might be helpful. Sometimes students might read that first little paragraph and say, oh, wow, I have to do all this? And the answer is no, these are options, right? So you don't have to find a character who has been dishonest to help and to hurt. You don't have to find a character who is misleading others for personal safety and to spare someone's feelings and to carry out a crime. The way that these prompts are written, they're not trying to pin down the question, they're trying to open up the exploration of a topic so that then you can develop a theme centered on a work of literature. And I want you to think about that, okay? These prompts are not meant to trap you, but they're meant to help you explore a landscape of plausible interpretations centered on a specific text. So be careful which text you select, because you're gonna have to explore that landscape for quite a while once you start writing the essay. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, towards the end of this week, we'll be writing the parts of the essay, but for now, the claims will absolutely suffice. And Ms. Barber and I have reminded you that if you have a friend, if you know of someone out there who would like to connect with us, who would like to connect for all the subjects, of course, but they don't have the device that's needed, or they're having issues with connectivity, please, on behalf of that friend, go to cb.org/tech, and the College Board is going to try to do all that they can to get these students connected with the right devices. Thank you again for joining us. We hope that you enjoyed this lesson today on Frankenstein. I don't know about you, but I think I'm going to go pick it up and reread it because why not? What else are we going to do, right, at this point? Thank you guys for joining us. Ms. Barber, any final thoughts?
Nope. Stay safe. Y'all wash your hands, and Bear and I will, and Mr. Escobar, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, folks. Goodbye.
Bye.